Why do we still play vanilla World of Warcraft? Why? Because it's better than touching grass. I'm not sure, but let's see why this guy's still playing. I'm really a retail Andy. I played a little bit of hardcore, but let's see why the classic Andys are still playing vanilla.
When making content about classic World of Warcraft, you quickly learn that people can't help but compare the classic game to the retail version of modern times.
Yes, Battle of the
In my
Andes.
experience, this behaviour only increases in frequency and the intensity of the reaction when there is either new content released for either version of the game, or more often, when one version of the game is perceived to be failing. This can be difficult to manage here on YouTube. After all, whilst I pull no punches when it comes to sharing my strong personal preference for the earlier versions of WoW, I have no intention of ruining other people's fun or shitting on the retail game as a cheap way to grow my channel.
Yeah,
My personal
right.
issues with modern WoW are just that, personal. And whilst I stand by my belief that the game has
Yeah,
moved
well,
in the wrong
here's my
development.
thing. Can't both be true? Can't classic WoW be good and retail WoW be good? That's how I see it. I mean, there's a lot of things that I find endearing and fun about classic. I think the leveling experience is still amazing. I loved playing it when I was doing hardcore over there. The thing is, I don't like the fact that there is no true end game to classic WoW. Obviously, there's classic plus and stuff like that, but there's a lot of quality of life things that were added into the game that I enjoy in retail. There's also an entire class that I play, the Death Knight, which is only available in retail or classic Wrath, but really retail. I enjoy the Death Knight so much, it's my favorite part of the game, so I need Death Knights to really enjoy the game. But I think classic is great. I don't hate on classic. I hate on the haters that hate on retail. I'm a hater of classic Andy's hating. That's basically it.
Developmental direction over the years, I don't resent other players for enjoying it. I would like to one day return to retail and check it out. In short, the last thing I want to
Retail's the
do is
future at the
foster
end
an
of the day.
antagonistic environment
Has
through
to
my
be.
videos towards modern World of Warcraft.
Some
With that,
people will say Classic Plus is the future, but honestly, if that is the truth, then I think the game is dead. There's no chance. It has to be retail. Classic Plus would be a nice addition, keep people playing, that kind of stuff. But if retail truly dies off, then there's nothing left.
being said, I think that the constant comparison of retail and classic is an inevitable consequence of having multiple versions of World of Warcraft available to players, especially considering
Oh,
you
I'll
can
get
play
that
them
up as
all
soon as
with
I
just one
start playing.
subscription. People are always going to compare their options in these circumstances, and even though, as I've just stated, you can play any available version of WoW, be it
Money
Vanilla
grab
Era
bandit,
Classic,
kind of.
Hardcore, Wrath Classic, or Retail with just one subscription, most people don't have the time, interest, or the energy to divide their gaming experience like that.
Yeah, I
Real
can't. I
life,
can't spend time between classic. He's right. I can't spend time between classic and retail. There's just not enough time in the day for me to do something like that. I'd love to. I'd love to, but there's no chance. It's just a money grab. I do think they would charge for a classic plus. I do. I don't think they'd give it away for free. There'd be it'd be an expansion essentially. There'd be a lot of dev time that would go into something like a classic plus. You need to like kind of create quest lines. Revamp an area that maybe was left behind in classic and never fully developed. You need to create a raid, gear, all kinds of shit. It would be an expansion. So yeah, I do think they would charge for a classic plus expansion. You're not gonna get that shit for free. So money grab, yeah, of course, of course. I mean, that's how you justify things. They're not going to put dev time into something that's not going to make money. That's for sure.
responsibilities, commitments, and other leisure interests get in the way of that, and the need to therefore prioritise, to choose one version of the game over the rest, leads to people picking sides very quickly. Given that my
Like I
channel
said,
has
Battle of the
largely
Andes.
become a classic WoW channel, for now at least, I see this debate all the time, typically through the lens of people like myself who prefer classic, by which I mean vanilla era WoW, over what came after. And before
Right.
I get into the heart of this video, I want to make it clear that I understand that. I understand that my audience is primarily made up of people who prefer classic, especially vanilla WoW with its old Lucius Malfoy looking high elf models
The
and
fuck
one
is
mechanic
that?
boss fights.
I've never seen that
so I
before.
appreciate that a lot of the feedback in this retail v classic debate that I've seen in the last few months is weighted heavily in favour of classic on my channel. But still, I think it's interesting that this debate is even happening
Yeah,
in the
unlike
first
this
place.
guy, my
mean,
I understand that my streams and are typically the opposite, right? A lot of you guys are retail Andes. We play a lot of retail on this stream, so that makes sense. And your opinions towards classic Andes are somewhat negative, okay? And I feel like it goes back and forth a lot in that. But we did play, hardcore classic, and it was fun for what it was. And like I said, I find classic endearing. I played it back in 2005 when I started playing this game. Classic was World of Warcraft. That was it. and I enjoyed it when that was what it, you know. But when Burning Crusade came out, I moved on. And then Wrath of the, I just kept moving on, you know. I just kept playing whatever was available, and I like the constant progression. I like something to play towards, and part of what hits my heart about Classic and why I don't put a lot of time into it is because there's an end. I don't want an end. I don't want to, I don't want to see end credits rolling and then I have to go outside and touch grass. The fuck is that? I want to just stay here and play forever. Is that too much to ask? I just want to wither away in this chair playing this game. Is that too much to ask? I don't think so.
Is it not
That's why I
amazing
play
that
retail.
people to this day argue that a nearly 20-year-old version of a game that hasn't seen any new content released since 2006, and which has been officially playable again for 4 years, is a better game than the modern version, which has had all that time to refine, innovate, and improve?
Yeah, better
I think
game
so
is
anyway.
subjective.
And I think it's worth asking ourselves why this is. Why is it that people prefer old school WoW over what we have today? And I've been asking myself that question a lot lately as
Or
I've leveled my
objective.
rogue through old Azeroth and interacted with
It's
so many
opinions,
other players. And I wanted to make a video about it in the hope that we can perhaps figure out what makes vanilla so appealing to us and possibly apply that to the future of the game.
For
Plus,
one, there's nostalgia.
I really enjoy talking about the themes and mechanics which work together to make old Azeroth such an immersive and enjoyable place to be. So if that's your thing, watch on. I think if you were to ask 100 classic players why they prefer their version of WoW over retail, you'd likely get 100 unique answers.
Probably.
The central theme would remain consistent, and it's why I prefer Classic too. I think I can summarise it in one word, in fact. Adventure. Let me explain.
Yeah.
You see, I think that this all comes down to the developmental direction that Blizzard took WoW in after Vanilla, compared to what inspired its original development. Vanilla WoW is at its core an online adventure role-playing
It
game.
is. That's true.
The focus is on making your own specific character based on the aesthetic and thematic preferences you have in fantasy
Right,
games,
right.
and then being thrust out into a truly massive, vast world with an equal level of
It's
depth.
not just a massive and fast world. It's a dangerous world, right? Because you really start off with nothing. You are a weak little bitch when you start out at Vanilla WoW, which is cool, right? There's that sense of progression and growth and everything as you level through. There's also the fact that Classic WoW and the leveling experience is over 2 massive continents. Okay, so there's way more content and biodiversity and stories to be told and all kinds of stuff when you're questing a vanilla than any expansion. You can't expect them to add an entire new Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor every time an expansion comes out. That just is way. It's going to take way too long. It's just not possible. So the amount of I guess material that vanilla has to work with as compared to any expansion that'll come out is always going to be bigger, right? There's always going to be more of it, and the sheer amount of it, and just the size of everything and the quests and all that, yeah, it creates a level of immersion that doesn't really exist in retail currently. But beyond that, I feel like then after that, Classic kind of loses it, right? The leveling experience is the best part, and then after that, what's end game really? You're gonna tell me end game rating in Classic WoW is challenging in any way or exciting? No, you can kill Ragnaros in fucking 5 minutes and then you're done. What do you do now? Jerk off? I don't know.
To explore on
Go
your
play
own
retail,
terms.
probably. It's probably what you do.
feel like a drop of water in an ocean, not just because of how big the world is, but also because of how many intricate systems there are for you to delve into, and the presence of many other players of all levels that you see out in the world. The focus is on creating your own adventure right from the start, and doing it
One
your
great
own
thing
way.
about Classic for
To
sure
put it
is
simply,
player
World of
player
Warcraft
interaction.
has never been a
It's
sandbox
necessary.
game, but the magic of vanilla is its ability to appear
Both at
like a
the same
sandbox
time,
game, whilst providing a satisfying, clear path of progression for your character. Now, some people will already be saying that these are just words, that I'm just regurgitating the same praise for Classic that you've heard from 100 different people for years now, and that in reality, Vanilla WoW is a dated game packed full of inconvenient mechanics and gameplay
Well, it
elements.
certainly is.
And to an extent, I actually agree with that.
It's true.
Vanilla
Doesn't make
is
it bad,
full
though.
of inconveniences, but I personally think that's partly what makes it so good, especially in comparison to the increasingly streamlined, stripped-down game
Look,
which came
it's
later.
inconvenient to have to group up with 5 other people to do something or 4 other people to do something. In Vanilla WoW, it's absolutely necessary though, even just for some certain quests and stuff like that. It definitely was a more social game, which was good. I enjoyed that. I mean, even if you want to just form a group and go do something, you had to fucking go into the trading chat and trade chat and go in there and start searching for people to group with. That was a thing back then. People had to do that. Like, I mean, you could literally see it on this guy's screen. My video's covering it, but the messages here are looking for more SM, Lib, and Cath. Looking for more, need one healer, LBRS. Like, people are looking for groups, right? And there was chatter back and forth, and people would whisper, and you would say, "Oh, I've done it before. Oh, yeah, this was cool stuff back then, right? It was much more social game, which I kind of do miss. I'm not gonna lie." And that was created out of the inconvenience of the fact that none of this material was created to be soloed, right? It all had to be kind of grouped up and done together, which was an inconvenience, but a nice one that forced you to socialize a little bit.
Later. I mean, think about it. Getting your first mount at level 40
Oh, that was
only
great.
feels so great because
Yeah.
you've spent the last
So damn
39
hard to
levels
do.
running around a massive world at a snail's pace.
Not only that, you had to fucking gather. I thought gathering the gold was harder than fucking hitting level 40, man. That shit was really tough. I ran SM 100 times and sold all the items I'd get just so I can get them out.
Getting your hands on a sweet weapon halfway through your leveling experience, like the Whirlwind Axe or Vanquish's Sword, only feels great because of how inconveniently long the time is that it takes for you to level, and your need to constantly increase your power to match the tanky, hard-hitting mobs you're pitted against along the way. Completing a labyrinthine dungeon like Maraudon, Sunken Temple or BRD only feels like such a grand achievement because of the time and effort you need to spend putting a group together, getting to the instance,
true.
and then
That is
working your
true.
way to a huge expanse packed full of mobs, not designed for speed and efficiency, but rather for immersion, exploration, and to fit into the overall world the game brings to life. In short, like any great adventure, vanilla constantly throws inconvenient problems your way and lets you figure out your own solutions, and it does so in a way which feels consistent and authentic to an actual virtual world.
Yeah,
There
but
is no
but like
cut-
but if he's hinting at like saying that group finder kind of ruined the game, I totally disagree with that. I mean, come on. God, really, group finder is the reason why you don't like retail or something? That doesn't make any sense. Because to make something difficult for the sake of making it difficult makes it's that to me is just a fucking circular talk. It's just dumb, right? Like, okay, yeah, there's a new modern day inconvenience. Okay, maybe Group Finder took out some of the social aspect of the game because now instead of typing and chatting back and forth and inviting people, you just post a queue and people queue up and you invite them. Okay, that's fine. But what it did was it opened up a certain aspect of the game to a lot more people. And it created an easier way to do that content. So you can explore more content and get more things done. To me, that's more important than just saying, well, I don't want Group Finder because I want to be able to chat with people. Fucking chat with anybody. You could still, they didn't disable chat. They just enabled a convenience feature. LFR is what it is. You don't have to fucking do it if you don't like it. Okay, it's a watered down, stupid ass. It's not really raiding. It's just kind of a bot version of a raid. But at least some people get to, at least Greg from accounting, who has 4 kids and a wife, and only has an hour to play the game, gets to see what the inside of the raid looks like. That's what LFR does. It lets people explore things, they didn't have time to do before. Because at the end of the day, World of Warcraft, it's an aging player base. I'm fucking 33 and balding. Okay, that's like the standard demographic for this game at this point. So yeah, some convenience features are good. I don't think convenience means you're a fucking pleb who is not good at the game anymore. That's the kind of classic Andy take that I usually have problems with.
cutting corners here, no skipping the queue.
Piscola,
when
what's
you play
up, man?
the game, you are logging your character into what was designed first and foremost as a world, not a series of game modes tied loosely together in an open environment like a glorified lobby game. This is what MMOs were originally designed to be, virtual worlds for players to quest and explore in, where the systems encouraged player interactions, socialization, and your own agency. Where your desire to run a dungeon or complete a quest or team up with another player wasn't based solely on whether it would result in a cost-effective, measurable increase in your character's power level relative to the time expenditure. This approach to design wasn't just limited to MMORPGs either, but is instead indicative of an older approach to game design overall. For example, if you were to look
Alex,
at
thanks for
another
the
of my
bits,
favourite
man.
games, Morrowind,
Yeah.
released a couple of years before WoW, you can see the same approach. The fast travel systems, which have become standard in later Elder Scrolls games, are heavily limited. Character progression
Yeah, but
runs at a
fast
much
travel
slower
is
pace,
necessary.
and there is no
World's too big. Are you seriously gonna tell me that you want to fucking fly or not fly even, probably because classic Andes hate flight. I mean, you can't mention flying in front of classic Andes. Those guys, when they go on vacation, they won't even go to an airport. They're just gonna walk, right? Because they're fucking they're real men. But to say the world's grown, you need portal systems. There's no way that you can have what currently exists in World of Warcraft without some type of fast travel. Now, I do agree. It does take some immersion out of the game, sure, to have portals that take you places, but it's kind of, it's something that's necessary. It's necessary. It's a necessary evil, as they say, but it certainly doesn't ruin the game to me.
No ever-present compass guiding you to your next objective. Adventure. That's what it was all about back then. And no, not just because we were kids, or because the internet was so much younger and less saturated with every manner of guide and forum post directing you to play the game the correct way. Instead, vanilla WoW and games like it feel refreshing and immersive for players now because of design choices that still hold up 20 years later. So that's vanilla, and why I think it remains the preferred version of World of Warcraft for a good bunch of players.
For a good bunch, yeah.
What makes it so different from the WoW of yesterday?
And anyone who tells me otherwise, I've done the fucking research, okay? Retail still has more players. Don't get that shit started with me right now.
And why did the retail game start to decline,
Google Trends,
at least
bitches,
in terms of player count, after the end of the classic trilogy? Well, to me, it comes back to that earlier point about inconvenience. You see, I made a case for why the inconveniences of vanilla are actually part of what makes the game great, at least most of the time. But sometimes, they're not. Sometimes inconvenience is just a pain, and the degree to which you can tolerate it in your leisure activities will obviously vary from person to person.
Right.
Sometimes having to travel all the way from Stormwind to Desolace, or from Orgrimmar to Blackrock Mountain, is just a pain in the arse.
Yeah, especially when you're doing it like the 30th time.
Booty Bay. Vanilla requires a certain tolerance, dare I say it, even an appreciation for pain that some people quite understandably don't share. And unlike today, where we have the ability to compare vanilla to the modern game and assess their differences with the benefit of hindsight, back when it was current content and Blizzard was eagerly trying to draw in more and more new players, these issues were seen less as an essential component of
Look, at the end of the day, World of Warcraft, even Classic WoW. Classic WoW was a new version of MMOs. Classic WoW was the easiest MMO to play and get into of all MMOs prior to it. MMOs used to be a very niche, hardcore genre that only like the biggest, nerds of nerds could play, right? Like they took so much time, you could easily lose everything if you died. Like there were a lot of very hardcore mechanics to MMOs in general. And then along comes World of Warcraft, and it's really like this. I don't know what word to use, but it's like it's just this new version of it. It's like it introduced it to a lot more people because it was accessible to a lot more people because it wasn't so hardcore, it wasn't so punishing, and that was in essence what made WoW so popular as an MMO early on. And so there were me going back and playing Classic. Blizzard continued to kind of make it more accessible to people. One mechanic, for example, that I fucking realized that I hated and that I forgot even existed was the leveling system for weapons. You guys remember that? Like when you would pick up an axe for the first time, you'd miss every hit because you hadn't trained. So you'd have to go to like some training dummy and just hit it over and over and over and over to that level it up so you can get a skill in it to be able to use it. See, that's a fucking that's dumb. You're gonna tell me that's fun? To go grab lunch upstairs while your tune just continually hits a training dummy so you can actually use the axe that you just looted? No, that's not. Okay, that's a hard... Yes, it's a feature, okay. Ooh, it's a cool thing, it's immersive. No, it's not. No, it's not. In real life, you can pick up a fucking sword and just use it right away. You don't have to get skill points to be able to hit something with it. I mean, I guess you gotta train a little bit, sure. You can get better with it. But to straight up use it? No, come on. So they got rid of that, and I was fine with that. That's not something that I miss, but I'm sure there are classic Andes out there who do.
Virtual fantasy world, and more is flaws, which ideally
inconvenience
should be ironed out
doesn't mean you're better
its expansions.
By being able to deal with it.
And that's what happened from as early as the Burning Crusade. I remember watching Preach's Legacy of TBC video back in the day, and hearing him justifiably celebrate the practical advantages of quest hubs, which became commonplace in Outland compared to the disparate, scattered nature of questing in vanilla, which would often see you jump from zone to zone, completing a quest or two at a time before hitting a temporary barrier and needing to move on. If you look at a vanilla dungeon like Zul'Farrak and realise how scattered the dungeon quests are, and then compare it to, say, Hellfire Ramparts in the Burning Crusade, where the quests are close by, you can understand why this was considered a big improvement, in terms of practicality at least. And TBC was just the start. Wrath of the Lich King was the expansion that really began the process of
Wrath was the
solve
transition into modern
the perceived problems of World of Warcraft. Interacting with players to form dungeon groups is tedious and time consuming? Add in LFD. Leveling is slow and annoying for most players? Add in heirlooms to speed it up. And so it went on and on. With each new expansion, the process of solving WoW's problems continued, and ironically, the player base eventually began to shrink at the same time. And so we have the game of today, a game stripped of as many inconvenient elements as possible, a game in which you can log in on a character and without moving queue for literally any kind of content worth doing.
Yeah, you can queue, you're not going to get an invite.
The game will tell you that too, directing you down one of the few paths which, due to the obsolescence of treating Azeroth like a virtual world to explore and adventure in, have become the objective ways to correctly play the game. And all of this can of course be accomplished from the comfort of your home city without the irritation of having to interact in any way with other players. I mean, why would you want to talk to people in a massively multiplayer game, right? Don't worry about it, you'll not need to speak to anyone unless you choose to say, try Mythic Plus or harder difficulties of raiding.
Exactly, you want to play the real content, you are going to have to communicate.
Why would you bother to go that far as a new player if you can experience every instance the game has to offer through LFD or LFR? I could go on, and the salt would continue to flow until it piled up in dunes like the fucking Sahara Desert. It's simple, really. Blizzard succeeded in their goal of solving WoW, as I've put it. They cut out time-consuming, tedious elements, they streamlined the game, they increased their focus on endgame content and made this easier to pick up and play.
Right.
They made the game quicker much more efficient.
True.
And in doing so, they lost its magic, at least to players like me. In return for
what magic did they lose? They lost the magic of the leveling experience, but the game has moved on past that. That's the thing. Now, leveling is really just used to kind of as an intro storyline into a new expansion, right? You learn about the new stories and everything in the lore by leveling. But beyond that, World of Warcraft is not centered around leveling anymore. The player base has moved on from that. So to say that, like, oh, okay, the game lost its magic. Wait, lost the magic of leveling? Come on. When you see people playing retail or classic, what are they doing most of the time? They're fucking leveling, because that's the best part of that game, because that's what Classic's focus was. The 98% of Classic and what it was made for was leveling. The end game was really kind of like a 2%. Like, hey, here it is, by the way. Here's some raids to do and some gear to get and shit like that. But real end game progression didn't start until BC. Raiding in Classic is a joke. It's a joke. People hit 60 and like a day later they're clearing the end content of the raid. So to say that, they stripped the magic of it, no, they just moved on from leveling. Their concentration in Classic was on leveling. Every expansion after that, the concentration was on endgame. The endgame in every expansion after Classic is better than Classic's endgame because of that. That's it. That's the truth. The truth hurts, maybe.
User experience,
but that's the
they
truth.
Traded a lot of its depth, its immersion, and its ability to grip a player from level 1 and not let go. The unparalleled, historic achievement of Vanilla WoW was that Blizzard succeeded in crafting an experience that went beyond
a
the
leveling
ordinary
experience,
feeling
yeah.
of playing a video game.
Yeah.
They made the world of Warcraft a world, vast and seamless, rich in lore that wasn't thrust in your face or course-corrected at every turn. They made
great.
a place
Leveling in
worthy
Vanilla
of a
is great.
true
I don't disagree with
adventure.
him on that.
And then, over the course of many years, and often endorsed by the complaints and requests of players, they proceeded to gamify, for lack of a better word, every aspect of the world that they had so skillfully and lovingly created. Now, as I'm sure you can tell, it is very difficult for me to not let my biases show when it comes to vanilla. I know there's an equal or even greater portion of the World of Warcraft player base who view most, if not all, the changes made after vanilla with a more positive light than I do. Honestly, there are times when I agree with this, and there are many aspects of modern WoW which I miss as a classic player, such as the more competitive, fast-paced raids and dungeons, which I took so much joy in for
The
many,
end
many
game,
years.
right, yeah.
The
That's what I'm
game,
saying.
in many ways, isn't so much better or worse, depending on which version you play, it's often just different. But like I said at the start of this video, most people don't have time to split equally between the different versions of WoW, and that means that the choice about
That's
what
hilarious,
you
I like
prefer
that.
your game to be does need to be made on some level. The life and history of World of Warcraft often feels to me a little bit like a train journey. Each expansion is a different stop, and players choose which stop to get off at depending on their own preferences and what they would like to see.
I mean, I love
Some
Wrath.
people
It's
are
my
content
favorite
to ride that
expansion, but I
train
didn't,
all
I
the
didn't
way
get off the
to its
fucking
final
train.
destination, wherever
I
that
kept
might
going.
be. But some of us were happiest right back at the start. What I'm trying to say here is that everyone has their own idea of when WoW was at its best, when the blend of modernisation and old school immersion was at its finest. For some it's Wrath or TBC, for others it's MoP or even Legion. But for me and many other players, World of Warcraft's design philosophy, the intentions of its developers, were never better than in vanilla, in the original world that they designed for us to explore and adventure through.
Explore and adventure through. You mean level through. Yeah, level through. Endgame vanilla, nobody argues endgame vanilla is better than anything that current game is
Almost
released.
20 years later, that remains the case.
I
and
think
it's why
that's
to this
at
day,
the heart
despite
of
its
the
age,
classic
despite its
versus retail
inconveniences,
argument.
and regardless of the lack of new content for it, so many of us look to vanilla era WoW with fondness, and we're always ready to jump back in.
And I want to talk about ice cream.
Vanilla.
Ice cream is great.
This poor guy, man, he went through
Ice
it
cream
as
is one
CEO.
of my favorite desserts.
I'll be honest.
Personally,
He dealt with a lot of
I love
shit.
chocolate, and I love cookies and cream. Cookies and cream is actually
Seeing this too
my
often nowadays, I
all-time
know.
favorite
I've seen
dessert.
this clip 1,000 times now.
But I understand that for some of you, your favorite flavor is vanilla.
It was a pretty good announcement, I'm not gonna
Hey
lie.
everyone, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and maybe you even agree with me on this, who knows. When playing old school WoW, I often find myself thinking about what makes it so great to me. and
Lack
how the
of sleep
game has
makes us all
changed, and
emotional, Helene.
These thoughts always ultimately find their way into one of my videos. If you like this sort of content and you'd like to see more, please consider subscribing to the channel, it really does mean a lot to me. Alongside my current fresh playthrough of classic era WoW on my Rogue, I have plans to cover some of my favourite events, quests and lore in the game. So if that sounds like
This
your
guy's
thing,
video is pretty
you
good.
might want to stick around.
Agree or not, it's a pretty good
I've also
video.
just moved house, by the way, which explains the
What up,
pause in the
alright.
video uploads. But this means that very soon I should be able to finally start streaming, which is something that I'm really looking forward to.
Nice.
And I hope that you stick around for that as well. But until the next episode, guys, be well, take care of yourselves, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Sounds good, sounds good. Good video, man. I mean, look, we can agree to disagree. That's okay. I don't hate classic Andys. I don't. Shit, I love the fact that they still just play the game. At the end of the day, they're sub just like me, and they're supporting the game. And maybe one day their support and their $15 a month can lead to better content in retail that'll bring them back into retail. You know, as long as you're playing WoW, you're a friend of mine.